I love to see the towns passing by and to ride these rails neath God's blue sky. Let me travel this land from the mountains to the sea, 'cause that's the life I believe He meant for me. And when I'm gone and at my grave you stand, say God called home your rambling man.
Welcome to Ramblin' Man Podcast, episode number 45. This one is with Addison Karl Brent Greenwood and Dominic Nieri, and it's on murals and art. Addison applied for, submitted, and won out the opportunity to do a mural here in Knoxville, Tennessee. I got to meet him as he was looking for faces around Knoxville and asked him to be on the podcast. He brought along Brent and Dominic, and it was a great conversation. If you'd like to follow any of them online, go to addisonkarl.com, addisonkarl.com. For Brent, go to INDINARTIST. And for Dominic, you can find him at wisenave.com. That's WISEKNAVE.com. Our sponsor this week, returning yet again, is Feral Giant. Feral Giant is a graphic design, illustration, and social media company based here in Knoxville, Tennessee, although they do work for all over. If you have any needs in the graphic design, illustration, or social media needs, find them at feralgiant.com or on any of the social media platforms at or / Feral Giant. Without much further ado, here's the episode. And this is very informal. It's not important. We're not going to solve the world's problem. Although if y'all want to solve the world's problems, good Lord.
Good.
We're
Well, we were talking about those just earlier. So
Yeah.
How many solutions did you come up with?
Earth is going to take care of itself.
Okay.
Become a firefighter.
Become a firefighter. Okay. I'll start out.
So you need a rake.
I'll start out with your name, where you're originally from, where you live now, in case you don't live here, and how would you solve the world? Or what did you want to be growing up? There you go. There's a better one.
That's you, Don.
You go first.
No way.
You go
don't.
first.
Okay, you go first.
Well, hello. My name is Brent Greenwood. I am Chickasaw and Ponca from Oklahoma. I was born in Midwest City, Oklahoma, which is a suburb of Oklahoma City. I currently reside in Edmond, Oklahoma, which is a suburb of Oklahoma City. Work for the Chickasaw Nation in a southeastern rural town of Ada, Oklahoma. I guess growing up, I was always drawing. I was always creating things.
Okay.
Did not think I would be doing what I'm doing with the arts, but I think growing up playing with Hot Wheels and Star Wars and cars and things like that, I think my earliest, idea of an occupation was to be a fireman. Oddly enough,
It all comes around.
right?
Yeah. My name is Addison Karl, Chickasaw Choctaw. Born in Denver, but grew up in Arizona. Live in, Washington and a little bit of Europe. Yeah.
Okay.
My name is Dominic.
Oh, wait. What'd you want to be growing up?
Oh.
Sorry.
I tried to slide that question.
Yeah.
I guess the same as Brent, like always drawing and painting. So in that genre, but it's pretty linear actually
Okay.
within the arts.
Okay. Sorry.
Oh, all good. My name is Dominic Nieri. I grew up in Los Angeles. I now kind of live in Seattle.
Okay.
And growing up, probably be like a thinker or a philosopher type. It's kind
Okay.
of how I wanted to.
Would you say that's carried over and that's what you are right now?
Depends on the day. Yeah. Problem solver.
I don't know ages. Have you ever seen Boys in the Hood?
Yep.
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 I have not.
One of my favorite lines in the movie is they go and talk to Doughboy, Ice Cube's character, and said, "What are y'all doing out here?" And said, "We just philosophizing, talking about God, stars, bitches, and shit." And that's still one of my. Anytime anybody asks me what I'm doing, I'm like, "Man, I'm just philosophizing.
Just
Talking about God,
philosophizing.
stars, bitches." I was like, I shouldn't be saying bitches. I got to figure out another word for that. Hose. Yeah, that's totally.
Yeah, but you're paraphrasing.
See, you're behind now. Nobody caught that, so you're good. Since y'all don't really know me, I will do. Jody Collins, born and raised here in Knoxville, have lived within like a 5-mile diameter radius from here my entire life. I wanted to be an astronaut when I grew up, and then I saw the Challenger explode and decided I didn't want to be an astronaut anymore. How I got into, I work for myself. I mainly do graphic design, illustration, social media consultation. I do photography, videography, all kinds of other things. But I got into that because when I was in high school, there were only 2 computers in the entire high school, and one of them was in the print shop. So I got into printing and graphic design and just kind of took off from there. But yeah. And I did not feel comfortable calling myself an artist till I was about 34 because I saw all my friends who could make a hell of a lot better art than me. And I still have a hard time with pen and ink. I keep working on getting better, but in the computer. In Adobe Illustrator, I got you, but pen and ink scares the shit out of me. So
Have you made the transition into the iPad, the Procreate stuff?
no, I think it's because I'm still not good enough. And I think I almost like missed the curve on it to where I got really good at working in Illustrator to where it's like, I can knock it out a lot quicker in Illustrator.
Yeah.
So I'll still do like sketches and ideas and maybe take a photo of that, drop it in underneath and use it as a guide, but I've never been able. It's also, I've got a lot of friends who work that way, and one of them works on a Cintiq, and they make me want to vomit because they're so talented
Yeah.
that it drives me nuts. I'm like, no, I'm going to stick to my little simple illustrations. But yeah, no. So what is your all's process for making art since you bring that up? Like, do you first like go through thumbnails and then take it onto a digital platform, or how do you work?
Dom, you just finished the new piece in Detroit. That's you, man.
Yeah, right. So I was asking about the iPad thing because I literally just got an iPad last week.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think with everything that they make nowadays, if you have a base of knowledge, if you're like growing up using these tools, everything is kind of intuitive, I feel like. So you can kind of pick it up and just go. And so, yeah, just straight out of the gates, flipped it open and started drawing, and it felt good. I mean, I'm sure there's way more you can do with it that I'm interested in. You know, like you learn a tool based off of, you know, what you need it for. And so if you need it for something else, then you learn how to use it in a different way. But
so are you now trying to use that as your start, like not thumbnailing or sketching by hand, but actually trying with the iPad to try and get used to that?
well, like the iPad can bring, like, it's a transference of reality. So like not only just for idealizing like concepts, but also like spaces, understanding space. So you can like take a picture of the wall and you can sketch directly on the wall.
Okay.
Basically. So it's like, yeah, I mean, there's like different ways for everything. Like you use the
Procreate.
Yeah, but you also have like you kind of stay in this like analog way of scaling, right? Isn't like a
Yeah, I mean, after it's rendered out digitally, then it becomes analog again.
Yeah.
But I mean, it goes from like analog to digital to analog to digital. I think this process is really interesting.
Okay.
So. Oh yeah, got to talk in the mic.
So you go analog to digital to analog again?
Let's see. Well, usually it starts off with photography, and then it goes into like sketching and concepts, like paper and pen, and then it'll go, or at least like, but not even literally. Like I'll be writing down like words and notes of where I think I want the artwork to go.
Okay.
And then I'll start sketching digitally, because it's wild. Like things that I was trying to do even 10 years ago with software programs like Adobe Illustrator.
Yeah.
As far as like coloring, rendering out from like a screen printing point of view, what Adobe or what Procreate can do now with that software application on the iPad is stuff that I was trying to do 10 years ago, and without like a Wacom tablet or anything like this, like it was impossible to do.
Yeah.
So I think that's really fascinating now, that process. And then once I render everything out and Procreate the way that I want it, then it goes back to being analog and gets painted in whatever format.
Okay. How about you?
I think my process out of all three of us is probably the least engaged digitally, because I feel like I'm pretty ignorant when it comes to that. When it comes to my paintings, I would say I'm primarily a studio painter.
Okay.
And I painted large indoor murals, and I'm kind of getting back to some of the outdoor murals now, because in the 80s I grew up with Krylon and skinny caps, and I was tagging the local convenience stores. It was more than tagging, it was Wild Style was my tag name back then. And I guess validation for me was that the gangs in the area, they wouldn't mark through my stuff, so that was pretty cool. So it'd stay up for months at a time. And but when I went into college to get formally trained, if you will, that's when I think I got away from it and got more into the studio painting and got into galleries and things like that. If I had always had a love for graffiti, because I think my palette evolved from that, just the intense colors, and I think that's still reminiscent in my paintings. And so since then, like I said, in the past maybe 4 or 5 years even, the outdoor murals have become more into what I'm really interested in. But I don't, my conceptualizations, they basically begin with a sketchbook like I would any kind of commission. Okay. And then I just take it and kind of grid it out, and a lot of it is freestyle for me. Yeah. Because that's what I grew up doing. So I'm still like, working off 12-foot ladders, doing the splits and spray painting and painting. And I don't know. That's like what I grew up doing, and I kind of stick to that. So anyway, I'm just kind of like still trying to catch on to this digital age and technology for me, I feel, and how to incorporate that better to project that image. And I have friends that use projectors too, and I've seen that done, but I guess I'm still just more into freestyling and freehanding it, but also understand the realization of going large scale to get things in proportion. Yeah. A lot of this, that's where I feel really kind of ignorant, if you will, just because of being able to use certain digital applications to kind of make that happen and realize it in a full scale. So just freestyling, for me, like I said, I've worked as large as 50 feet by 20 feet, 18 by 24 feet indoors, and like for different tribal entities or businesses and clinics. And it's been pretty much just like my easel painting transferred to a wall. What I really appreciate about Addison is that he's just in a short time, I've been working with him just over a year. He's shown me how to transfer that easel studio style of painting to a huge wall and treat that like your canvas, and use materials and things that I never would have thought about using. So that's been awesome.
So piggybacking off that, you mentioned grid and projector. So when you do large scale murals, and we'll go right down the line, like, do you mainly work off a grid? Like you draw it out and kind of grid it out and then figure it out on the wall? And we'll go down the line of use projectors, stencils, anything like that to kind of help.
For me, I haven't.
Transfer it so big.
Yeah, for me, I haven't relied totally on a grid system.
Okay.
I have for some parts, but for me, it's been a lot of just hopping up there with a piece of chalk and drawing my
okay, like a
images,
pencil or chalk out.
And then spray painting the outlines and kind of different value tones and where this color is going to be at, and just kind of like do the outline, and it's all freestyle. and it'll change. It's kind of like my studio paintings. It will kind of evolve, and the composition will change sometimes, and that's probably why sometimes on a mural it might take me a little longer because that's not going to work out. Because I didn't in my mind I see how it's going to
Right.
work, but I didn't put it out onto a system or some kind of a computer layout to see how it's actually going to fit. And so I kind of get away from that and just end up freestyling.
I will say in design, like there are times where I'll sketch out an idea and I'll start going down that path and realize I need to dump. So I think it can be the same way in the computer. Like you get down a certain path, you're like, oh, this looks like crap. And so you have to kind of switch and adapt to make it work. So I don't know if that makes you feel better or worse, but
Creative process.
Yeah.
In the very, very beginning, I didn't grid. I didn't use anything, and my paintings were awful.
So you didn't even do like prelim?
No, I
Okay.
would just go out to abandoned buildings and paint a lot of times. And the paintings were horrendous. They were really, really bad. And then
They're not on Instagram. The people
No.
can't scroll.
You might be able to find some reminiscences and stuff, but I think that's fine to have that process, that trial and error. And then
Yeah.
I worked in a partnership with another artist for about 3 years. That I feel like in that partnership, the other guy that was painting, he kind of took head on some of that stuff, and it just fed into the insecurity that I had about blowing up images and that sort of thing. But we ended up using a projector a lot of the times.
Okay.
Too. So, and that always felt a bit strange, but just the logistics of it too. Like you have to be at night and you need electricity and you need a really good projector depending on what you're painting.
And you gotta get it good and level.
And you got to get it
Like you
level.
can't
And
see
if
your-
it gets knocked or even
Yeah.
bumped slightly on the wall, it's going to move 6 inches or a foot.
Yeah.
It seems like a headache. And it's like at that point you're just filling in the line, like you're color booking. You're not really. But after that, I made it the next basically 3 years. I made kind of like a promise to myself that I would have these like failure rates, where I would just like destroy paintings just to learn.
Yeah.
And I was asking a lot of other artists that are friends too, just questions about like how they process. And slowly started coming, like a lot of artists, if you watch their process photos, you can see a lot of them have their own little methods kind of tweaked. And a lot of them they paint tick marks into the wall, and then they'll use those for reference points. But some years ago, I guess 2017, 2016, I was talking to an artist from Australia, Roan, and he was just telling me like he basically uses the architecture of the building to grid out. And once he said that, it was just kind of one of those oh shit moments, like how blatantly obvious that is. So now like the piece that I just finished here in Knoxville, it's all gridded out because it's center block. So the center block is the grid system for my plotting. So I just need to count bricks. I don't need to do anything else. I don't need to put a chalk line in. I just need to count bricks essentially.
How big is that one?
It's 3 stories high, and then I thought it was about 300 linear feet, but then Dom and I were debating this today. Maybe it's long. I mean, it's essentially a city block. It goes from Union to Walnut.
Yeah.
In the alleyway, it's that entire
100 feet
stretch.
is a football field. So
yeah. So.
Wow. Okay. I saw it. I guess about a month ago or so. I was down there, and I was like, Jesus.
Yeah, it's a night and day difference now.
Intense, so big.
But I mess stuff up still all the time.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's what's cool about the system of like learning how to do things analog. If you fuck it up, you can always go back in and fix it.
Yeah.
With a projector, if you fuck it up and you don't know how to fix it, then you're just left with like some monster eye or something like really wrong that you have no tools or no concept on how to fix.
I never thought about that, about using the cinder block as your grid pad. That's smart.
What are they, 15 by 8?
8 by 16.
8 by 16, yeah.
Standardized.
Okay. How about you?
I may be like the most liberal of the group because like I'm not against any sort of technology. I just think that it depends on your intention, you know?
Okay.
Like if you make a drawing, that's what you can kind of see trends in like the evolution of tools, right? So someone discovers a cool way to do something on the iPad, and all of a sudden there's like 10 paintings out in the world that look just like that, you know, or
in the graphic design world, it's painfully obvious.
Yeah.
The biting.
Obvious.
So
yeah.
you can see that. You can see those tools being reflected. So if that's not your intention, you know, to make that mark on that wall that mimics the mark that's made by the computer, then I don't know. I guess it'll get condensed in the history books with the rest of the people that made that same mark with that same tool. But I think it's cool to use tools and technology, especially if you're traveling, you know, because we come to Knoxville or whatever, and you could spend 2 months on this wall, or you can have some sort of trick with technology, and you can get done in a month and maybe enjoy yourself and get to see the people and the culture and the wherever you are. So, I mean, might as well.
And now we're going to circle back this way. How many murals is murals? You said more of a studio painter, but we'll go through like how many murals you've done or been a part of. How about you? Or if it's too many to know, then that's totally a fine answer.
I've been on like a tear for the last 5 years. It's like I can't even count. I think just this month I've been a part of around 20 murals in like 4 different cities.
And maybe this is a better question to tack on. Like how many? Like you're kind of the lead point person. No, you're not the leader. Oh, they're. Oh, good Lord. Like how many have you been lead on, or how many have you assisted with? It may be a better way to ask that.
I actually just painted my first painting yesterday.
Okay.
Yep.
And here in town?
In Detroit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I flew in last
Good
night.
Lord.
Yeah.
Okay. Little bit of an aside. I went to Detroit a couple years ago, and I went into Canada, and when I came back in, the border agent guy, he said something to me that still to this day cracks me up. He was like, it's like, man, I keep hearing how rough Detroit is. It's not that bad. And he was like, stay in the shadows of the buildings. I was like, did you just like Jason Bourne activate me? What the fuck did you do? And he was no, don't get outside of the city and you'll be fine. I was like, oh, God. I stayed at some hotel, and my cousin up there was like, how are you still alive right now? I was like, I don't know. They probably are just like, this guy's an idiot. He doesn't know where he's going.
Because you're like 6'8".
Yeah. That has not deterred a lot of people from messing with me. So,
especially the little guys. I think you're a challenge.
I've told this story way too many. I was out in Maryville, and there was a little guy that was drunk smoking a cigarette outside, and he was sizing me up.
Yeah.
And I just looked at him. I was like, man, I am sober, and I'm going to throw you into the street. 'Cause I don't play around, man. It's like, don't mess with me. But yeah, so how did you like to? We'll come again. We'll circle around. Yeah. How did you like Detroit? They leaned into artists pretty heavily about 7 or 8 years ago, where they had a lot more. It seems like a lot more grants and programs to get artists to come in and.
Yeah, there's a bunch of cool programs that stayed strong through everything, and if not, like, thrived through that. And so I think now, the artists kind of rebuilt the city, and especially the surrounding areas, and I think the corporations are starting to come back now. So, yeah, it'll be fine. Different industry, you know.
Right. I still remember, I've got a photo of it somewhere on my phone, where they were shooting either a video or just a photo shoot. There's this great Detroit mural downtown, looked like an old postcard. And they had this car up on 3 wheels.
Oh, wow.
Like an old Impala or something. I was like, oh, and I ran over there and took a shot, and they were like, what are you doing? I was like, don't worry about it. I just want to, this is amazing. Like, I'll be out of your way in 2 minutes. Like, I just want to get a photo of this because all of this is pretty cool.
So did you go over to Windsor, Canada?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's where.
What a shithole! I went during the day, and I was like, this is kind of a shithole. Like,
yeah, it's crazy. One of my good friends lives out there, so I spent a lot of time there. Like, pretty much all of February I spent there, and then
why in February?
It was like the coldest day in Detroit history. It was wild, but yeah, that's where I just was. Windsor, man.
Not to
fun.
crap on our Canadian brethren, but
yeah,
it was not. I'm sure once you get outside of the little across the river part, it gets better. But good Lord.
No, that's where I was the whole time. Just
And
in the
it
downtown
did not get
across.
better? Oh, you were in downtown
Yeah,
the entire
it
time.
was wild. Yeah, it's a wild place.
Yeah, it was. I don't know how to say this politely. There were a lot of police presence where I was at,
Yeah.
and they all look like models, or they were from L.A. And I was like, "What in the hell?" I'm used to guys here. No offense to some of my friends that, their belly comes over their belt buckle, and seeing them up there, I was like, "Are y'all shooting a movie up here? What the hell is going on that y'all are walking around?"
Those are Mounties.
It's definitely not Detroit water.
Oh God. Yeah. So now, so circling back around. See, I said we'd get back around to it. How many murals have you been lead on or a part of, or is it too many to?
I think at this point I've kind of lost count.
Okay.
But
And is like maybe another distinctor, if that's a word, is how many are like official versus unofficial? So, because I would say with street art, you wouldn't count some of what you did as murals. They were more like just street art, correct?
Graffiti.
Graffiti,
Tagging.
yeah.
Graffiti.
Graffiti. So a little bit too much to
Yeah.
think of. Same for you, like kind of too much to.
For me, I probably could count the ones I've led on. Like, just was the main guy. Just on one hand, it's only been like 5.
Okay.
The others, as far as like assisting, it's not that much more. Maybe a dozen at
Okay.
the most. Because, like I said, my focus has been for the past 20 years studio arts.
Okay.
So.
Have you seen an uptick, like, in talking about like that with Detroit and cities wanting to get more public art? Because I know Knoxville is huge on that. Like, all the public art downtown that gets changed out, if you saw any of that, like over in, people call it Crutch. It's Crutch Park, and all that, and even murals around town. They've invested. It seems like the city's invested a lot more money. Have you seen an uptick in that?
I think it depends on the city's public art program.
But
more
I
or
mean,
less.
more cities, I think, investing more money in public art.
Well, I mean, from public art applications of what is actually like more or less available out there.
Yeah.
I mean, from what I've seen from applying for the last 10 years nationwide, maybe out of 10 applications, maybe 1 is for painting, and the
Okay.
other 9 are sculpture, installation,
Right.
ephemeral, sound, whatever. I think painting is really on the low end,
Oh, okay.
and especially like in Seattle, where Dom and I are at, up until the last 3 years, a painting program within the public art program, which was one of the first 1% cities
Yeah.
from the 1980s, has been 0. They do not have. But then other cities like the Philadelphia Mural Program
Uh-huh.
has been running for 40, 50 years strong.
Jeez.
And the economics that they have and the community benefits within these programs. But they're really traditional murals. They're not really contemporary.
Okay.
But then the rest of them are all either they're started up by people within the community, or they're NGO, or they're like mural festivals. And that's really blossomed in the last
Mural festivals.
maybe
Okay.
5 years, I would say, where it's really strong. But those are kind of fleeting though too. Like most mural programs will run for 4 years, 5 years tops, and then they just kind of dissipate organically for whatever implosive reason.
Okay. Well, I seem to, speaking to you all who are not from here, I seem to notice more traveling people who do mural art. Like, have you all seen the one over on do you know where K-Brew is on Broadway, since you've been here for a little bit? There's a big Knoxville, like, postcard one on the side of Nothing Too Fancy's print shop.
Yeah, that's a local artist though.
No, they were travelers. It was paid for by Visit Knoxville and the city, I think.
The one that's on the radio station?
No. This one is just over here. This one's not very far away. It's like one of the most Instagrammed spots around town because it's this massive. But it's a couple that's all they do is they paint like postcards, murals.
Yeah, greetings tour, right?
Yeah, greetings tour. Yeah, that's them.
They're super rad.
And then there's 2 young women who did.
There's Jesse and Katie.
Over near UT. Yeah. So I don't know. It seemed like that's popped up a little bit more than I expected. I was surprised that, because we have, I would say in town we have two main guys who do mural art. I'm going to say that and get in trouble for just mentioning two guys, but it seems to be like they're the ones that everybody reaches out to. Like the one I was telling you about at the diner that they were wanting me to do one. He reached out to the two of them, and neither one of them got back to him. So
Gotcha.
he was like, I'm just looking for somebody to do. He's wanting me to do a burger sphere. So it's the sun sphere, but with a burger on top of it. Which he's like, I was in there yesterday, and he was like, how are you feeling about that? I was like, good, but fall. I can't do the summertime, man. Summertime would murder me. I wear shorts in the wintertime. I can't handle being out there in the sun all day. I'm a pansy ass. Okay, so you talked about applications. So are you all constantly, well, either or, like constantly looking for any city that's has some kind of public funding project like that? Like the grants or the applications, because this one here, how did you find this one in Knoxville?
This one went out through the Knoxville Art Alliance.
Okay.
And then it went to a couple of different public art distributions and email lists.
Okay.
They went out for the open call. And then from there, folks applied to it.
Okay.
And like what I understand about the one here is that there was only one, maybe one or two, but I think it was only one local artist that made it to the phase, like the second round, where it was to give the concept.
Right.
And they backed out. So the city actually had no local artists even in that second phase, which is interesting because I have met quite a few artists here.
Yeah.
And I asked them, like, why didn't they apply for this? And they're just kind of shrugged their shoulders.
Yeah.
So
that became a little bit of an uproar on like a lot of like news stations' Facebook pages. Like, why are we getting somebody? And then one of the local city council members told me, is like, well, nobody local really applied. Because I think that originally they had it blocked out to where you could, I hate to use the term bid on, but you could bid on like one section, combine a few of those sections, or the whole thing.
Well, it was kind of an and or. So
okay.
when they put out the RFP and when it got to the semifinalists, they asked the artists if they were interested in either applying for a concept for the entire length of the wall,
Right.
or a smaller section.
Right.
So I think they were just kind of shotgun blasting it out there to see what they would get as far as proposals.
Yeah.
Like maybe it would have been 6 different artists curated in a specific way, or maybe they would have just had one artist that did the entire stretch of it. And then for myself, when I saw it, I just automatically, I think, I do the whole thing. There's no question about that. So.
Okay. Yeah, that was where when anybody was fussing about that, I was like, well, you can't, if nobody applied or they backed out, then stop bitching about it. Like there's nothing to complain about. Like,
well, I mean, the thing is massive, man. You have to, like, we're talking about how many murals have you done, like, you have to kind of lose count to be able to take on something of that scale, you know, and do it in a reasonable time. So that's what's crazy is, like, a lot of the times we're under these deadlines because we have life to attend to or, like, another job. There's no way you could be out there for 6-8 months painting this 500 by 35 foot wall. It's like,
or just logistics and expenses alone eat the majority of that budget up. So
yeah, there were a couple of smaller ones around town that got thrown out there. That one of was inside a residence just over here, to where Dogwood Arts put that up, and they were like, you know, put what you think you would like to do. Like, you didn't have to concept it out or draw, but apply, and we'll look at who you are and what your history is, and we'll try and figure that out. And I was like, well, if it's inside, I feel a little bit more comfortable with that. I was going to do something with type, because that's what I'm good at doing. And I got rejected, and then they were like, well, if you still want to give your idea to us, we'll give you $50. I was like, no.
weird.
No, I'm good. I'll just do it in my house, you know, where I can do whatever the hell I want.
No, the idea is what's the value.
But to your point, it was the turnaround time was super short. Like, here this is, and you have to figure it out in like a week. And it was like, I don't know. I don't know that I can do that. Figure out what in the hell I would do if I want to do it. Same thing. Is there, when you apply these, are there generally pretty good lead times, or is it usually pretty quick?
There's generally pretty good lead times. There's some that get like short posted, or they're on a tight deadline, depending on the project. But like the majority of the ones that I apply to, there's anywhere between 300 and 400 artists that apply.
Oh, hell. Okay.
And then maybe they narrow it down to 3 or 4 artists to give a concept.
Mm-hmm.
And those artists get a stipend for that concept. And then one gets picked.
Okay.
Yeah, Addison, kind of explain your process of how you went about doing this. Because you spent a lot of time here before, right? And
for this one specific, or in general?
This one specifically.
This one started out, I think, around 10 months ago when that call came out.
Mm-hmm.
You apply to it just like with your portfolio, your resume, letters of recommendation, contact information. They look at the portfolio, and then the Public Art Committee decides what semifinalists are going to be there. I believe there was around 50 or 60 artists that initially applied, which is really small.
Okay.
In comparison to because I didn't see this posted on the typical websites for public art that are available. So I think that really limited how many people from outside knew about it and applied to it. And then there's a semifinalist, and from this, I think there was 11 or 12 artists that were semifinalists.
Mm-hmm.
The one local that dropped off. And then the closest, I think there was this artist from Nashville.
Okay.
And then the rest were all out of state.
Okay.
But from that phase, this one was a little bit more interesting because you had to get everything notarized by Notary Public. When you're submitting, you're putting in the full concept, all the sketches, the written aspect of what your concept is, how it affects, full budget, full maintenance plan, and then references to all the work, all the visuals, all the illustrations, all the drawings, all the sketches, all the concepts. So essentially you're creating a business plan.
Right.
To make this successful. And it makes sense from a city's point of view because they're contracting you out for a subcontractor job in the same way that if they're going to build public restrooms or the Sun Sphere or improve roads, it's the exact same process. It's open to anyone. And then from there, the Public Art Committee voted on which proposal they liked the best.
Mm-hmm.
And they made a point system, essentially. Whoever got the most points got the commission based on criteria. And that Public Art Committee, too, it's open. I think there's about 11 members that's on that. And not all are voting, to my understanding. So... and then I got the recommendation from that. So that's a long process. And
I'm trying like hell to get on that committee.
Yeah.
Because I saw a picture of everybody on that committee, and there was not one person. There was one person under the age of probably 60. And I was like, we need to get some more younger people in there too. Not that I'm young, but to get something that's a little more out there as opposed to something that's safe.
Well, it's all like architects and designers and artists and working in, I think you come to that realization how important that is for your community to be involved in those kind of roles from volunteer bases when you get much older.
Yeah.
Most time people in their 20s and their 30s don't give a shit about their communities. Yeah. And so they're more oftentimes at bars than they are thinking about the long term or the impact or how the visuals of their city looks.
They're sitting in a bar bitching about it.
They're complaining about it.
Doing something about it.
So, and then it's also interesting too because once you get on those panels, if you do choose to volunteer, you really understand how public art works in the background.
Yeah.
And you meet a lot of really fascinating people. So I think from a working artist, it's a smart move to do a committee for a while to understand the ins and outs and how those applications come across.
Yeah.
What is a good proposal? What is a good written concept?
Okay.
So at what point did you produce all those sketches? Before you even got picked?
No. Well, I did a hypothetical sketch of what I would want the artwork to look like based on the architecture, the color theory, and the way that I broke down that wall. from the beginning. But the crux of my concept was essentially it was going to be focused on local community members from Knoxville. Nobody celebrity, nobody famous, no celebrity worship bullshit, nothing like that. Just
you don't want to put Peyton Manning up there on that damn wall?
No. So...
Wait, is Peyton Manning from Knoxville?
No, UT football.
Oh.
He's the biggest UT football. If you want to go people from Knoxville, Quentin Tarantino's from Knoxville.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. That would be a lovely face to be on the side of.
This gargoyle face.
I mean, all four of us are models, obviously.
Yeah.
You know.
Sorry, Uncle Q.
No, to go off that, is this an idea you just came up for this one, or is this a style you kind of been working on in?
I think it goes back into that community aspect, and especially within public art.
Okay.
Or public artwork. The idea of community engagement for the proposals and the work that I'm trying to do is a really important aspect.
Okay.
Like coming from like a figurative background, if I'm going to different, like either it's mixing cultures that need to have conversations, or it's painting people from those locations, right?
Right.
So that was kind of the whole premise of my proposal, is that those portraits that I would paint would be interactions in that community engagement of people of Knoxville. So there was an initial site visit / community engagement visit that I did in May, where I came out for 10 days. And I went around and I tried to immerse myself, and I asked as many people to take me around as possible within that time frame, which is a bit short, but to just take photos of people. And then in that pool, there was 70 photos that I took, and every single person I did a line drawing of, which took me a month.
Is that still hanging up in Market Square?
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. So because of like knowing that only 6 people are going to get picked for the mural,
right,
I wanted to make sure that everyone that was part of the process felt inclusive to it, even if they weren't having their faces painted on the wall.
Yeah, that Dad posted a photo from Market Square where it looked like the two of us were like almost like catty corner from one another. Thought that was pretty funny. He's like, I think that's my son. It's like, yeah, bald, big giant ass beard. Yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
Okay. So you go through the initial sketches. That was still part of the submitting for. That was part where you got down to the semifinalist.
That was after I got awarded.
Oh, okay.
So,
but the semifinalist part, that's when you wrote up like here's what I'm thinking it would be.
Yeah, and like in that proposal for the faces, I just used like I drew people in the way that I wanted the color theory to be in the cropping and the composition of the portraits, but I used like temporary fill-ins.
Okay.
Actually, I used a photo of Brent for one of those renderings, which I don't know if he ever saw. So in the initial proposal, it's got Brent's face on that.
Nice.
That concept artwork is like how hypothetically this artwork could be.
Yes, I'm going to have to see that photo, sir.
He's going to hold you hostage.
After the fact now, but I did not realize that, so that's cool.
Yeah.
Something I was going to ask is, obviously the style is all Addison, and there's another element there that I thought was really cool, is utilizing the corrugated concrete blocks, and it's all various colors, which just makes it pop. And I don't know why, but that's the kind of stuff that like my paintings, I feel like sometimes the color palette I feel is like candy. I was like, oh, those colors are just like, you could eat that, those are like gummy blocks or something, so I'm just like, those colors, man, those colors are awesome. So what was it for you that's what I was wanting to ask you, is what was it for you that was a deciding factor to use that kind of treatment on those blocks?
The architecture was the main, and like the framing of the cropping of the portraits and the faces, but the color theory, like the breakdown of the 12 or the 6 portraits, each have 2 columns, so it's 12. That's kind of the breakdown of the color wheel, at least in my mind. And so all those color, like what I like doing a lot of times is giving people little notices of what's going on in random context. So if they see all the faces are painted monochromatically, the underlayers in the cold tones of the color wheel, And then they see the trapping lines, the hatch lines are the complementary warm tones. And it's that full color spectrum. The theory is that every single color in the color spectrum is being used
Okay.
in a very specific way.
Okay.
So then using the corrugated bricks and just having this random algorithm of color, where again, I'm using the entire color spectrum. It's just putting those signifiers of like, this color actually is a hatch line somewhere in the portraits of the work.
Okay.
And so it's just those signifiers. It's like almost like putting your color swatches when you're like a designer, where you have to give like your PMS or like your Pantone swatches on the side. It's doing exactly that. So you're telling your viewer, like, these are the colors that are here, try to find it. Or maybe they don't even notice.
Yeah.
But I just think like mixing that up in a kind of a vibrant, juicy way is really engaging for the viewer. And whether they connect the dots or they don't, still visually, I think it's pretty beautiful. And
Okay. That makes me think, and this be for all three of you, like when you have a new piece you want to create or a new opportunity or something like this, are there times where you do something you're uncomfortable with just to try and test the limits of what you're able to do?
always.
Always. Like in studio art, like is the thought, do you go into it with the thought of, well, I can always just paint over it, you know? Or is it, do you push yourself to try new things?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I'm always trying to push myself to experiment. And I think where my challenge is when something really kind of just happens really spontaneously and using
Right.
an action style of painting. And I'm like, damn, that's dope. I really like the way that looks. And just realizing that and leaving it alone. Sometimes I'm like, but that happened too quick and I got to do a little bit more and tweak. And then I sometimes lose it in the process. I'm like, God dang it. I just need to leave it alone. So yeah, all those like quick marks and action painting and just like, you know, I like to use mixed media. So I'll use charcoal too and paint and mix the two. And that's how I create some of my value changes. So, I like to experiment with different papers. I like handmade papers. And so I like all that stuff and, doing photo transfers and things like that. And then I'll come back in with a stencil and maybe pop some spray paint on that. So, you know, it's all those things. I just like to have fun and kind of push the limits and be experimental. So, yeah, I do that.
And you said always.
I think you have to be uncomfortable, or at least try. I mean, that's part of that failure rate.
Right.
Because otherwise you don't figure things out. And a lot of times those accidents, like, it's something I talk to a couple other artists about quite often. It's just like those risk marks. They either make or break a composition, but you have to try them. But like Brent said, like, you can overwork something so fast and just make it go to shit.
Yeah.
Really quickly. But it's just, again, then it's just the realization it's paint.
Yeah.
You can always paint back on top of it. Just time.
In that vein, there's been times where I've set time limits. Like, I'm only going to work on this for 1 hour. And whatever it is at the end of the hour, that's what it is. Yeah. And that's been a trip. Because you get to like 45 minutes, you're like, oh shit. This has got to make sense in the end, man.
And I think that's really, honestly, that's where I feel like some of my paintings really do excel. Like I do like live paints.
Right.
And I have like an hour or 2 hours. And I don't have time to second guess myself. So I'm just like in there and I'm like cranking this out. And I'm just jamming. I'm going with it because I don't have time like, that didn't really work. I mean, it is what it is. You know, I just like get it on there. And for the most part, it's just going on, you know, intuition and knowing how to make those marks and all those years of painting that just come out and not really second guessing yourself. So I think the live paintings for me are really the time where I feel like I'm jamming. Yeah. And some of the best work I produce just real quick and getting it done, you know, knowing you have a deadline. Whenever I have a client that says, oh, just take your time, I'm like, oh, shit. Yeah. Don't tell me that because 3 years later, they're like, hey, how's that painting come along, you know? But, you know, that's the thing is like my wife told me, she says, you need to do live paintings all the time because that's when you get shit done. I'm like, I know, right? So anyway.
There's an Australian band called the Red Paintings where they would invite artists up on stage to do a live painting on how they interpreted the music while it was going on, which was always really cool seeing them. Their music was okay. No offense to them, but their music was okay. They opened for somebody else, but I was like, that's an interesting concept.
The gimmick is good.
Yeah, the gimmick is good. Yeah. And how about you? How do you push yourself or do you push yourself?
So I'm like fortunate. This is like I said, the other day was like kind of my first painting where I had to go through everything by myself.
Right.
But typically I'm on the support side of things. So
Okay.
like I work as a producer on these projects. And so what I'm doing is pushing pushing everyone to, go faster, to experiment, to like, how do we get this done? How do we work together? Like, you've never used this tool, let's use this tool. Like, so
Yeah.
that those practices can carry on.
I've heard some actors who then got into directing saying that was their school for it, was acting. So they would watch directors and be like, I like what they did there. I don't like what they did there. You're kind of picking and choosing, and you end up on down the line being a much better director from having kind of been able to troubleshoot in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So do you kind of feel that way? Like,
Yeah, but I'm taking the opposite route. So
Okay.
I've been like the director, and now I get to be the actor. So it's kind of interesting. I get to steal everyone's techniques.
okay.
Oh no.
Okay, I'm going to go into in talking about like street art and stuff. How do y'all feel about Banksy? Like, you just smiled and you're shaking your head. Like I only bring that up because a newer documentary came out. I haven't watched it yet, called Saving Banksy. Have you heard of it? It's essentially talking about like the art world and how they, somebody will come along and there was a painting on the side of some dude's garage, and they paid the guy to be able to take it, and then they put it into a museum, and it sold for a hell of a lot more money.
All right, so let me tell you where we're at.
Football hooligan. That's what I'm gonna say.
Football hooligan? Okay.
This is where we're at. So we talked about cities expanding their mural projects. We
Right.
talked about like, artists traveling the world, painting. That's all they do. I just got off a project recently. Like, I can't say too much about it because I signed the papers, but it's basically bringing artists into this like house of consumerism. It's like a place, you go during the weekends. There's movie theaters and shops and
Okay.
some that I don't know what you call them.
Like a mall?
Sure.
Okay.
I can't say what it was.
No. But I'll say like a mall. I said that. You didn't say that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. But property owners, spending millions of dollars to bring artists in to raise the property value of this place to then attract better brands to these institutions. So that's where we're at now. So
Okay.
I would say maybe thanks to Banksy for...
Banksy's an Andy Kaufman to comedy,
Yeah.
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
He's like a predictor.
Okay.
Well, it's brilliant commentary and just like antidotes and just shenanigans on a lot of ways that fits into that creative world.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's in a completely he or they, them, it. It's a completely different category than what most graffiti writers,
Right.
graffiti artists, street artists, urban artists, whatever category you want to self-identify with, is in. So,
Okay.
And I mean, I think like a lot of his stunts, even the stunt at the Biennale this year was fascinating.
Yeah.
But it's all like two quick lower jab punches about what's going on
Right.
in a particular place or society norms or things like this. It definitely has that ephemeral nature of like what was going on with Rooster Collective 8 years ago, like what they were featuring a lot, which a lot of like the mural programs have gotten away from now today, and it's not even in the same category as public art. It is, but it's not. It isn't.
Right. Kind of in the same vein of
It's public, but it's not, and it's art, but it's not public art. That's
right. I'm trying to remember his name. Obey Giant.
Shepherd.
This is only my opinion. He's always come off as like a douchebag to me. Like could be a nice guy. I listened to his Mark Maron interview, but I think I grew up kind of in I know this is Knoxville, so maybe y'all don't I grew up in the rougher side and grew up kind of rough. So a lot of times when he talks, I'm just like, you're a rich kid. You need to calm the hell down, man. Just about how punk he is and all. I was like, seems like he is fronting. Like it's a lot of surface. That's just me. But I also am weird about art in that because I grew up that way and because of how I grew up art and because I do graphic design and marketing and all that shit, there's a lot of it I look at it and go, that's marketing and PR. That's not art, that's marketing. It's all about the story behind it. More about the story behind it than it is the piece itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and there's tons of people, right? Like that have success bridging, genres, right? So you can listen to that. What it's like hip hop going country or country going hip hop.
Oh yeah.
Nowadays, it's like there's moments for it, and I think that if you can play on multiple sides of the fence, then you have a better way to impact a larger group. So. Yeah, a graffiti artist that was I mean, like, it's taken out of the context of vandalism, where graffiti is, and maybe Banksy still lives on that because he or they or she is
the royal they
is doing it in like sporadic acts that's uncontrolled compared to someone that's being paid or commissioned, or compared to someone that's doing it for a public art reason or a privatized reason, like painting at a place with stores.
What's his name? David. Why am I blanking on his name? The guy who painted at Facebook. David
Cho.
David Cho. Yeah. Because he's kind of the same way, isn't he? Where he came out more of like a street art and then became kind of, I don't want to say legit. I don't know if I'm talking out of my ass, but became more legit or respected in the art world.
I mean, he came from like contemporary art and graffiti background, but and he has had success, but he also got bankrolled from Facebook really early on.
Yeah.
Which basically gave him the freedom to do and choose whatever he wanted to do.
Right.
So, but he's done some pretty fascinating projects, and like some have criticism and some don't, and some are legitimate, and some, I think, like all of us, we have those ups and downs.
Right.
So,
how do you feel about Banksy? I hate to mention him, but I feel like he's the one that, like, my dad knows. My dad actually may not know who the hell Banksy is, but I feel like he's more in the public conscious than almost anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, kind of just to continue that conversation, just to comment on what's been said. I just feel, just short and sweet, good or bad, he's raised awareness about the whole, street art genre, if you will. Social commentary, definitely, I think that resounds with all of us, and just his messages that he's put out there. Yeah, accept it for what it's worth, stencil art, yeah, but he used, like I said, using the surface to maximize that surface on whatever he's stenciling onto or, painting onto. So, I appreciate the social commentary behind what's driving his work. And like I said, because I do some of that myself, right?
Right.
Just not on scale like he's doing it, obviously. But when, like in Indian country, there's a lot of issues we have, which I know more of us see what he's doing, and I see us as like generally speaking, Indian artists that want to be contemporary and urban and kind of latch onto this or utilizing that, and it's raising awareness within our own native communities to kind of put that message out there and comment to the ills of colonialism or what have you. So, like I said, good or bad, hate them or love them, I think it's all taken with a grain of salt, really. And
yeah, and a big reason I brought that, because that new documentary brought up an interesting point about how he's become in vogue, like, and how a lot of people are getting rich off of his public art or his street art.
And that's the thing that, to me, too, is like, is there, like, because there's some knockoffs out there, like with any art form. So, is that a genuine Banksy, or is that his crew, or is that, so to me, there's limits, like, I don't know, man. That's where I'm like,
man, it's Andy Kaufman, and it's like professional wrestling all over again.
Yeah,
it's
so that's exactly where, to me, where it gets really kind of like.
Well, I think And that kind of, did y'all watch that exit through the gift shop?
Yeah.
What was his name? Mr.
Brainwash.
That kind of proved the damn point of the copying and all that, because it seemed more like an industry. Like he had people doing it for him to mass produce those pieces.
But Mr. Brainwash's capacity, like, he takes what's already there and he takes imagery and iconograph that's already there and
Right.
repurposes them in an aesthetic that looks reminiscent of urban or graffiti or street art.
Right.
Banksy, like, for better or for worse, like, he's fucking with the art auction. He's tearing up paintings, whether it was stunted or not.
Yeah.
Whether he's sitting at the actual Venice Biennale
And
Plaza San Marco and selling paintings or trying to sell paintings commentarying on all the tourism and the giant tourist boats that are destroying that city. Like, what he's doing is a lot more thoughtful than what Brainwash could ever dream up or have 30 graphic designers doing for him.
Right.
In production, or even the hotel in Palestine. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, he's the Andy Kaufman in this kind of way. Like, he's intuitive enough to see what is going on, and it's the commentary of what is going on. But it's a completely different thing than like Nichos or Lobros or anyone from the Weird Crew or One Up or David Walker or 2-1 or like any number, or James, or like Rekka, or there's so many other artists that have spent years becoming a good painter.
Right.
And it's a completely different thing.
Yeah, how exhausting would it be to be Banksy? Like, you have to hit a home run every time, right? Or else you're not Banksy anymore. You kind of have to, like, one-up yourself. Like, it reminds me of, like, kind of, like, rap or hip-hop on the internet, you know? When they first come out and they have, like, the witty back-to-back, like, verses, you know, when you're like, hold on, wait, what did they just say?
The
You
Odd
know?
Future.
Yeah. Just like, it's so good, you know. It's like so witty. Like, you stumble upon this like realization of like, oh my god, he just said that.
Yeah.
I imagine that's what Banksy's artwork is like. It's like, what happens that one time when your work doesn't make a point and you're like, well, I'm done making
So
points.
he can't really coast on his style. He has to constantly.
Yeah, he's got.
Yeah, but then you just don't publish.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
You just don't put it out there. If it's a fail, you just don't put it out there. But like the Venice thing in Biennale this year, I think was really fascinating because nobody really gave a shit. Nobody really understood what he was talking about with the tourist ships and the cruise liners there. But because of the fact that he had the interaction with the Venice police, they had no idea who he was or what he was doing. Just the fact that he couldn't be selling art in San Marco in the plaza, and he had that footage. That was the only reason why I got play.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
what happened?
He went to the Biennale and he set up a little art like cart where he was selling these paintings on the cart, and they all had like classic Venetian paintings in the background with like a giant cruise ship in the background.
Yeah.
But like the composition kind of went over multiple paintings. Nobody cared. Nobody gave a shit. Nobody even gave it a second look until the police came and told him that he had to leave. And then it was like, the police don't know who this guy is. This guy was Banksy. Da-da-da-da. That's what made it hot.
Yeah.
That's what made it newsworthy. But that would have been a miss.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it would have been a miss.
It would have been a miss.
So in talking and kind of leapfrogging off of that on biting other people's style, because that happens a lot in design. But it's also, do y'all know who Wayne White is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you know he's the ties to here and all that, right?
Yeah.
Do you know who Wayne White is?
I unfortunately do not.
So Wayne White was the biggest thing he's known for probably is that he was the art director of Pee Wee's Playhouse. So all the weird figures and stuff, that was all Wayne White. But he's an associate professor at UT, and he lives in, I think he lives in Chattanooga. I think he kind of splits time between the two. He's fascinating. There's a documentary on him called Beauty is Embarrassing. It's really good. But in Chattanooga, about 2 years ago, they did like this big Wayne-orama and did at the Hunter. Did you go to that?
Mm-hmm.
I went to both of them. They were amazing. Like, it was amazing. But the biting off his style, it's the paintings he did with the type where he
the
would
typography
go with the typography where he would go into
the word art.
So he would go into like a salvage shop and buy an old landscape painting and then do this type on top of that. But I see so many people copying that to where I hate to say it, there's a local artist that does that, and I will go, that's Wayne Watt. Like, that's not you.
Yeah, but Wayne's paintings are like 40 G's.
I know.
So it's like you can copy all day, but you're not getting paid for it.
That's one that I struggle with because I think I want to see what they come up with, not them just like, oh, this is something that he does that I'm just going to steal. But I guess that's everything is stealing. I think it's go back when I said marketing and PR. I was in San Francisco at the Museum of Modern. There are two of my friends, Kim and Michelle, that I get fussed at all the time for this shit because they fuss at me. And it's like everything is art. You can't bitch about anything. It's like I can bitch about you can bitch about whatever you want. Like, but I was in the Museum of Modern Art in San Francisco, and there's a Walker Evans photo, and next to it was a copy of a Walker Evans photo where the artist went. I'm going to use an example that's a piss poor example. She took one of his photos in a book, took it to Walgreens, had a copy made, and that's her art. I was like, these two should not be beside one another. And I got yelled at. Like, hers is just as valid as his. I was like, but she's just, it seems lazy to me.
It's the action of the replication, yeah.
But it feels like, that's why that is a point of marketing and PR. It's like, she didn't create something on her own. Which I'm sure I'm wrong and yada, yada, yada. But that shit bothers me.
That's when you get all like philosophical and institutionalized about art, and then people get annoyed because you get into that elitism.
And I think it's one of those, it's because I respect Walker Evans so much. That's why it kind of bugs me. Yeah. But my friends yell at me. I'm like, no, hers is just as valid. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't talk to y'all.
I mean, like, it all depends, right? I mean, there's like...
context.
Yeah, context and the spectacleism of things. Because there was like, an artist who commented on people's pictures on Instagram. Then Richard Prince,
he's another one I struggle
with. Printed them out. And then,
because he did that with the Marlboro Men back in the day.
Yeah, and nurses. And we could all thank Andy for that, right? Andy's fault.
What?
Just the appropriation and the repurposing and the drawing out of concepts and materials, right?
Well, yeah, that's true. The Campbell soup cans, yeah. Who was the one that always cracks me up is the Elvis as a cowboy one where it has the 3 repetitive. Yeah, I can see that. I don't know. I think it's also my friend Michelle hates what she calls couch paintings. Any kind of landscape that old people have about, she's like, those are terrible and they're pointless and all this. I'm like, whatever it takes, man.
Serve the time and a place. Again, it's context.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're like 1800s rolling through the frontier and you've seen a landscape for the first time and you break down to paint it because there's no photography.
Yeah.
It's a pretty impressive piece of artwork.
Yeah.
But in today's comparison, when you've got HD photo-taking iPhones and no one gives a shit about a landscape painting.
Yeah. Well, that's I did another one of these with 3 of my friends who are all artists. And I talked to one of them is a photographer, and I talked to him. I was like, do you feel like Instagram has kind of screwed us in that if you saw like an amazing photo in 1940, it would blow your mind. It would end up in galleries, all this stuff. But now you just scroll right past it because it's boring. Like it's become boring to us because you can go on a feed like Discover Earth on Instagram, and every single photo is a photo that 50 years ago would have been seen as awe-inspiring or gorgeous or whatever. And now people are like, oh, that one's not that good.
I think for a lot of artists, Instagram can be a double-bladed sword.
Yeah.
Because either for some artists, it flattens out their work and it makes their artwork look impeccable. And then when you see it up close or in person, the painting's awful.
Okay.
It's either executed really poorly or it's just a shit painting. or the flip, where someone can paint really incredibly in person, but it never translates when it gets flattened out or put into a square format or a thumb scroll format.
Right.
So it goes both ways.
Those damn filters. That's what it is.
Don't use filters. Don't color correct someone else's painting.
X Pro 2.
Russia.
Well, I mean, I think more than that, I think it's kind of messed up collecting artwork, because I wouldn't think many people my age or even younger than me or coming up or even a little bit older have the tradition of collecting artwork at all. Like,
Right.
To most people that go to a gallery, taking a picture of the painting and posting it on their Instagram is just as value, or if not more value, than actually owning that painting.
How many selfies are taken in front of the Mona Lisa every day? I want to count on that number. That makes me hurt. I was in a museum once and Starry Night was there, and I couldn't even get within 50 feet of it because everybody was just crammed up to get their crappy photo for Facebook. And that drove me. I was like, God, okay. All right, guys. Let's calm down. I don't know. I don't think we've solved anything. Do you all believe there is like for some people it's not about making good art, it's about making sure the right critics see your art, or making sure, the right wealthy people buy your art? Do you think there are some people that are a little bit more insincere about what they create?
For sure. It's like anything.
Yeah.
You have the full
Thomas
spectrum.
Kincaid.
Yeah.
The painter of light.
Mm.
That one cracks me up.
We went by his gallery and gift shop on the way to the trail yesterday.
Really?
We went to Baskins. We went to Baskins Creek Falls.
Okay. Yeah.
And there was a Thomas Kincaid. Isn't past, I think, Dollywood, but kind of along the way.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, just like Addison said, everyone is in that game. They're wanting to make a buck. They want to capitalize on whatever's hot. They're willing to bite someone else's style to fit their own. They want to sell. They want to make a buck. So, I think for me anyway, it's all personal. For me, when you start doing it for money, that's when you really can get pigeonholed, right? If you really do catch on to something, I think you just be genuine and do what you love. And my belief is that everything will take care of itself. That's the way it's been, at least for me up to this point. That's the way it's been. So I feel really strongly about that. And I think one project will lead to another, and because you're doing what you enjoy, and people will find you, clients will tell their friends, whatever. So you definitely have to do the work. There's a lot of work involved, and being an artist isn't easy because it's, I, like others have said, I've known a lot of artists growing up and far superior talent, but yet for me, it's like, where are they at now? And I see myself, it's because, it's just, they didn't want to put in the work, the long hours to forge through, all-nighters to, do whatever it needed to be done. Not saying that makes me better than them, but I'm just, my convictions and what I'm doing with my art, I just feel more strongly about it. So,
okay, here's one. Is artist your full-time job now? Or do you do something else, or do you have side hustles or anything like that? Or is being an artist how you earn the majority of your income?
For me, it's still kind of, it's a indirect, I guess, say byproduct of what I'm doing, because I am in the arts education field as a educator, administrator. But it seems like my whole life, art's been my side hustle.
Okay.
Just because of the time it takes, and taking care of responsibilities with family and life and things like that. I've kind of tried to step closer to the edge and take that leap of faith to be a full-time artist, and but at the same time, being into the public education and that sphere, it's allowed me to have summers off and things like that, which I always had all these summer gigs. So it's been a balance for me, and it still is to this day. It's still a fine balance between art and a regular 9-to-5 job. So
okay.
but my job is in arts education, so I still get to do
Right.
that. So,
How about you?
I definitely don't do anything besides art.
Okay.
But I'm not necessarily the one making it, so I'm on the support side a lot.
Okay.
So I have like every possible way to help the process.
Okay.
Whether that's a space, or whether that's exhibition, or whether that's opportunity, or documenting the process, or like creating the marketing or PR for it, or drones, or
You're the one I'm
whatever.
complaining. I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
I'm just
it's
kidding.
all of it. So I kind of trying to understand how it works and how to make it better and change it for the future. So I kind of like do everything I can to figure out everything I can.
Okay. The question was like, is art your main gig? Like, is that what you do for a living, or do you have side hustles or something else you do?
It's full time
It's full time.
since about 2007.
So the reason why I asked that was to ask, are you still, with doing it full time or with producing or with balancing it with being an educator, are you still able to do passion pieces or pieces you enjoy, even with any level of the three of you are? I'm getting a yes.
yeah, definitely. So for me, it's definitely, I still have commissions that come through people, and then like the beginning of the mural projects too, just
Right.
sit down, laying out the concepts, give them what they want, but they're coming to me because they like my style. So that's what
Okay.
is cool, because they've seen my work. So it's not like they're trying to have me paint the side of a house with something they want. It's all my style. It's what they want. So it's my style of buffaloes that I paint, or my landscapes, if you will. So it's that style that they enjoy, and they just kind of, I work with them. It might be a painting dealing with healing, or just figurative, but it's all done in my style. So that's what's cool, is that I've been doing it long enough to where people are coming to me for those commissions. So
Do you ever feel like you're stuck in that and you need to do something completely different?
I mean, yeah, I was just talking to Addison about this. It's like I still want to be, I want to push it. I think it's evolved. I'm ready for like a new chapter to maybe go more into the abstract.
Yeah.
Just dealing with just the intuitive process of painting and creating, rather than relying on, this has to somewhat resemble this or that.
Right.
But just paint to paint. And I keep talking about that, and I just need to do it. So that's kind of on me.
There's a big thing now in design of like no free work ever. And I kind of disagree with that, because I feel like there's a lot of times I can do projects for like nonprofit where they're trying to raise money or something, that I can do something that I feel uncomfortable doing just so I can get that experience or get that out of me. Like I did one, a lot of the illustrations I do in Illustrator are flat, very 2D. And I did one where I took something and I drew it in Illustrator, and then I took construction paper and built out exactly what I did in Illustrator, using that as almost like a template or a guide. It was a lot of fun. It took a shit ton of time, because I was like, why did I put so many pieces on this thing? I should have made it a hell of a lot easier, because in Illustrator it's easy just to keep adding to it. But it hit a point where I was like, I have to be done with this soon, because this is going to make me want to jam a pin in my ear. Like, it was driving me nuts. So are you still able to do, even though you're doing it full time, are you still able, or do you just channel or funnel what you want to do into what you get paid to do? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean,
You
this,
still enjoy it.
like, in the last week, since Brent's been here working on this project, him and I have been talking a lot about this too, actually in a couple of different capacities, but man, I just forgot what my point was going to be about this.
You've been talking about it a lot, about maybe enjoying your work or getting paid to.
Yeah, that's what my point was, about the scheduling of things. And I was asking Brent at a certain point, like, how do you plan for your year or your next 2 years, or how do you go about doing that as an artist, of like saying, okay, maybe this year, because you do get busy really, really fast, and people don't understand that a lot of times. but you say maybe this year I do 2 free projects, 1 paid project, and 2 nonprofit or humanitarian
Right.
projects, whether they pay a little bit or none at all or whatever. Or I'm going to do an art residency or 1 gallery show or
Right.
however that fits in. But kind of planning for that and having that quota limit per year for you, I think really helps that structure.
Okay.
Whereas like, I think saying no unpaid gigs, you're shooting yourself in the foot
Yeah.
for possibilities, because a lot of times those connections that come out of certain projects are more valuable
yeah.
than the monetary pay. And it's just doing things for the right reasons too, but also making sure that you aren't that starving artist nomenclature or like stereotype that everyone expects you to be when you say that you're an artist.
Right.
You do have a living from it. A lot of times, like with these, like the public art projects, they're very different than my studio paintings because they're for public art and it's for a community
Right.
that generally I don't live in. There's usually a public art panel behind that, so it's got to cater to a lot of different variables. So that work is really different, even though I try to link it up as much as possible to studio work.
Okay.
But if I take 1 paid job, then I know that, I can go volunteer at a refugee camp and do art programming for 2 weeks,
Yeah.
for example, and it's unpaid, and I'm fine with that because I actually really enjoy doing that kind of work, and it feels good when I come home that I just spent 2 weeks with families.
And you may not have the money to throw at that charity, so you do what you're good at.
You
in
bring your
giving
time and you're valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then even with like the 2 local artists, or 2 of them that I've been working on here, they're asking a bunch of questions too about that whole thing. And it's just that kind of dialogue we've been having with them and saying, I mean, you really have 2 paths as an artist to go down. You can be the artist that does, I'll paint your flower and landscape on your wall because you're a flower shop. Or you can be that artist that this is what I paint and this is how, and I've spent years developing my craft. They come to you specifically for this, in the way that people come to Brent for his work. It just depends on what kind of artist you want to be.
Right.
Either one has its pros and cons, right? But so it's just kind of figuring that out from the beginning. I think what makes a lot of the mural, like the more contemporary mural artists that are probably better well known, it's because they do have a strong aesthetic, or they have a strong style, or a strong way of painting, or a strong subject matter or composition or whatever that is.
Right.
And they're known really well for that.
Okay.
So
How about you? The original question was, do you still do stuff that you enjoy, even though, or have you tried to funnel that in? Or because you are more of, you help produce, then do you take and figure out what you want to do and do that for your own enjoyment?
Oh, I love every second of this. Like,
Okay.
I'm 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for years. Like, don't have a wife. I don't have a dog. I have an apartment filled with my friends' paintings.
Nice.
That I don't get to go to. Yeah.
Okay.
All day, every day. It's all good.
In the thought of giving back, and it's interesting that you're a teacher, do you all ever reach out to like schools, like high schools or middle schools, and go and talk to the kids about art and arts? Like, something I do is I go and talk to them about, I hate to monetize this, but how you can still make money in art, how you don't have to give that up as a kid. Like, because people will say, well, you can't make money at this. So I talk to them about like graphic design or commercial illustration or anything they can do to where they can keep doing what they're passionate about when they're kids, to not let somebody dampen out that flame in them.
Yeah, most definitely for especially for my job line of work, we focus on students 4th grade to seniors, and
Okay.
I oversee an arts academy, and that's actually what I just came off of last week, and it was for 2.5 weeks, and like I said, dealing with those ages 8 to 18, And basically, I bring in guest presenters. I bring in teaching artists that are doing this for a profession.
Okay.
And to help share these life experiences to these students that are really passionate. They're there for a reason. They want to be there because they're young artists, young performers. And so when they see that you can make a living off this, that whole notion of, oh, you can't be an artist, you know, or like our parents, or maybe someone that told us or told my parents growing up, an artist, what do you want to do that for? You know, they see the struggling, starving artists. So anyway, I want to squash that notion, and I feel like we're making strides in that by doing this Arts Academy, which has been going on for 15 years now. Started out with like 38 students, and this year we had 365
Holy
students.
hell.
So, and dealing with everything from on-stage acting to metalsmithing to pottery to 2D painting, 2D drawing. And this is all like provided through the Chickasaw Nation. And so through that, we're able to go out to public schools too and do like little mini arts festivals.
Yeah.
And just kind of enforce that culture and arts with the demographic in the rural communities. And I feel like that is at least getting it out there and helping sustain. We want to continue to nurture it. But like I said, bringing in these teachers that are doing this for profession, and these presenters that are into filmmaking and music to show that our
Pottery,
students that this can be
whatever,
done. Yeah, this can be done. You can make a living at being an artist. Just staying focused and doing what you're good at.
So as you pass Thomas Kincaid, there's a place in Gatlinburg called Aramont School for the Arts. Have y'all heard of that? It's an immersive program to where they do teaching and all that. It's amazing. It seems like it's more of an adult level. They do have kids that come in, but like Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge, even though they're big and loud and all that, it's still, you get back in the country roads, it's still pretty rural and pretty poor. Like, I assume everyone knows who the hell Dolly Parton is, so that's where Dolly Parton came from. And she still does two things called Imagination Library, where she kids get a book like every month from a certain age to a certain age for free. No money. And any kid who graduates in Sevierville gets money from her to help go into the future. So it's weird that everything is unseemly there. Where you got cotton candy and spray painted shirts and truck nuts and shit like that.
Cool.
Alligators.
Yeah, you're like,
sharks.
wait, you're in.
Yeah.
You're in. You're like, I'm in. But in the heart of it all is like this School for Arts that kind of does a little bit more outreach and trying to teach some kids, but also trying to sustain some artists who may not be able to do it.
And then too, just the whole public art. You're engaging the community. I mean, seeing people come up, even before there was color put on the wall, taking a picture. Oh, the wall looks great. And this happened here. It happens when I paint on walls. I mean, I could just, be buffing out a wall white. That wall looks great. They're driving down the street. I'm like, oh, it's just white. But it's like there's something. It's I don't know what it is, but it's engaging overall. So you see people, and so it's really cool. You see young people, students, like looking at that, and I'm just thinking, what's going through their mind? Like, hey, I could paint that, or I want to paint something like that. Keeping that dialogue or that conversation, that image in their mind, and show them that this can be done, and just to see it, in that public, art realm, it's pretty fascinating and encouraging.
Okay. Do you all do any like kids outreach or talk to kids?
I just did this cool project. I don't know what month it is, but it was at a high school in South Central Los Angeles, and a bunch of artists came in and painted murals for the kids, and kind of transformed the high school over 2 weeks' time.
Nice.
Yeah, some of the people we mentioned earlier.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even part of my proposal here for the public art installation is that I was doing community workshops and engagement. So I did do like an open art session at the O'Connor Senior Center.
Yeah.
I did do a youth art program, like a workshop at the KMA, where we had about 18 kids out of 20 that we had it open up to. So that's something that I'm really conscious is, especially like that that old argument of why are you bringing in an artist from out of town in, being conscious of, and doing those community engagements. So maybe one of those 18 kids that I did the gridding workshop, because I the whole workshop is designed of like how you take a small sketch and scale it up to the wall.
Yeah.
Maybe that gives them the ability here in the local demographic to be able to do it. And I think it's the same thing, like the first painting I did on a wall was when I was in the 5th grade, because we had a guest artist come into our elementary school, and I painted these 3 bison on the wall. And I remember being so proud of those things for years.
Yeah.
But just having that little connection when you're a kid, like I can't remember the artist's name, really, like many other details, except for like we did this landscape painting and I got to paint these bison and I was stoked on it.
That's awesome.
But even like from that, I mean, 2 years ago I got invited to Pakistan and Karachi with the U.S. Embassy and the Islamabad Embassy to teach at 3 different universities. I did like a lecture session and like kind of a workshop when I was in Hong Kong a few years ago at one of the universities there. And it's fascinating to me. Like one of the kids was asking, what do you do when the government kind of controls what you can and cannot paint? And especially with what's going on in Hong Kong now. And that question caught me by surprise a little bit, because I was just like, well, you paint whatever the fuck you want to paint. And then I was like, oh, actually, no, you can't in some countries. And especially a lot of the places I've been. But yeah, I think those kind of things are extremely important and both inspiring, but also building those communities and those networks up. I think as an artist, it really reinforces what you know as well when you have to explain it or create curriculum around what you're trying to do. And then you watch other people's minds kind of grasp with it and start rolling with it. I think that's a really powerful tool to have as an artist.
Yeah. Do you know who Kevin Smith is? Silent Bob, and Clerks, and all those. You know, he has this great thing from one of his specials where it's talking about life as an artist, and one of the things he says 2 big things. He's like, it costs nothing to encourage an artist. It costs you nothing to say you did a really good job on that. Like he talks about that, like in the nature of like Instagram and all that, to where you can just go in and find people and say, good job. Like, and you don't know what that means to that person at that point in time. And the other thing he talked about was finding the why not people in your life. He's like, there's innumerable amount of people. That's a lot of M's in a row. That are like, why would you do that? Yeah. Like, find the people in your life. They're like, why not do it? You know, why not make a film? You know, paint something, make a piece of pottery. Why not? You know, it's all. So I feel like a lot when I talk to kids, that's how I talk to them. It's like you have this freaking professional camera and video in your pocket. Do something with it and go and play around. Go enjoy it and figure out, you know, although that's scary that some 5th graders I've talked to have iPhones. I'm like, you little bastards. I had to build my first screen to do screen printing when I was in high school, and you got a damn computer in your pocket, you little... Get off my lawn, you little bastards.
Spray them with the hose.
In that vein, so did you all go to school for art, like college, or where did it start with you, and how far down the education path did you take that? Anybody?
Yeah, my parents encouraged me to go to college. I was done with high school.
Okay.
But it was them that really kind of pushed me to go, because I would have been... I think my dad, he did go for a couple semesters. My mom did too, but they never graduated. And so like with back then, you know, college was to give you a level playing field with everyone else. So getting that education was, you know, driven home pretty strong with me. So, but I was pretty much done with education. I was done at school. I barely graduated, and I was like, I just want to be doing other things, you know, with my time. And anyway, so I got a partial art scholarship for a local college there in Oklahoma City, but I didn't feel like they were really able to help me define my voice as an artist, because I was taking all the basic stuff that you take. And I heard about this school called the Institute of American Indian Arts in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Okay.
And it was a 2-year college program, associate's program in the early 90s. So, but they've been around since the mid 60s. So anyway, I went there and got a full scholarship, and so, which was really nice. And so I was out there for 3 semesters and graduated and came back. So yeah, so my schooling, my higher education was focused on the arts, and I got a bachelor's and then obviously associates.
Okay. To teach, you don't have to have a master's or anything higher than that?
Well, for when I was doing adjunct teaching,
okay,
they considered me an expert in my field, so that's where I was teaching. So
it's killing me. I'm trying to teach graphic design in college here, and I can't do it because I don't have like a PhD or master's.
Well, even like a just adjunct?
Nope.
Really?
You have to at least have your. I've been doing this for 27 years. It's like in that vein of like, when do you not balance out that I have X
that
amount of
experience
years?
should count for something.
Nope.
I was kind of surprised that when they reviewed my CV and my resume and all that stuff, that they ascertained that from my experience, and so
it just forced me to teach middle schoolers and high schoolers how to do graphic design. It's like, if colleges are not going to allow me to do it, and screw it, I'll figure out a way to do it.
Man, I'd rather get hit by a car than go back to middle school again. Man, they're so mean, right?
Well, I teach them in a secondary location in a kids' community arts center.
Okay.
So they actually have to come there. Here's a weird fact. When I graduated high school, between high school and age 23, I got 6 job offers to teach print shop around here at different high schools. I was like, no, those kids aren't going to want to come in that class.
Yeah.
They are taking it because they think it's an easy grade. And I can't. I'll put some kid into a damn wall.
Yeah.
Because I'm not that much older than them at that point. I was like 18. And I was like, I can't. I got to teach at a level where they want to do this. Otherwise, I'll just get impatient and angry about this. So, how about you all? How far up the ladder, or where did you start and how far up the ladder?
Outside of high school, it was a little bit of community college at Scottsdale Community College. And it was a lot of like life drawing classes and still lifes and all that fun stuff. And then for a brief moment, I was at the Art Institute when I was living in Los Angeles, and then dropped it in my junior year.
Okay.
And that was getting my bachelor's for graphic design, but I don't know, it just made me sick to my stomach. So, but I single mom, 3 boys. There's no financial, not in this country at all, for higher education or really.
No.
So
one good thing about my state and my former boss, even though he's a little bit, he ran for governor and leaned into the not knowing anybody's politics, not wanting to get into politics, but he made it to where you can go to community college for free in the state of Tennessee, completely free, doesn't matter. And he's now the interim president at UT, and he's trying to make it to where if your household income is less than $100,000 a year, you can go to UT for free, which is great.
Yeah.
Which is great. But the funny part is people are already bitching about that, going, why don't you make it $200,000? And it's like, shut up, man. Like 100, that's getting a lot of kids out of these rougher areas to get them to go to UT. For a free ride is amazing. Now, they still have to go through steps. Like, he also has a program called Tennessee Achieves, where I volunteered with that for a few years, where I would go and help coach the kids. Like, you need to write essays. You need to prove that you're going to take this seriously, that the money's not going to just get wasted. And you would have the kids that would come that would drop out of it, and then have the kids that would embrace it. But how about you?
I studied at a university.
Okay.
For 5.5 years. I didn't get anything from it. I walked before I could sign my diploma, but I don't think anyone's even ever asked me if I graduated high school, so maybe one day.
I'm the first one to ask.
Yeah.
on a stupid podcast. Show me your papers. No.
I think education's important, but it's like not a thing that ends. It's not. There's no end to your education.
Right.
I think that if whenever you're doing something or in any moment, if you're open to the opportunity to learn something, then it's an everyday thing. You know, if when you get into the position where you think you know something, then you're missing an opportunity to grow.
Right.
Like you work with people and they kind of get ahead of themselves, and then that's when problems get caused because they think they understand something, and when, instead of standing at like a neutral spot where you can have the opportunity to learn something maybe or observe something that will like spark some sort of realization, then you know. So I think with books and the internet and friends and conversations and experiences, the learning never stops.
Always a student, never a master.
Yeah,
as long as you're paying attention. But I think like one regret with not going to legitimate art school or however you want to fit it is that like when you do those things, whether it's your like professors or like your co-students or your colleagues, like that social network is so vitally important after you graduate, and kind of you build those relationships over time.
Right.
And it's generally like those art professors or so on and so forth. Like those are the ones that like point you in the direction of like good galleries, institution contacts, museum contacts. Like that's the kind of stuff that really helps out as an artist.
Right.
It's one thing to be prolific or have your thing or be learning all the time. It's another if you have the right people seeing what you're doing. And that can apply it in the right context.
Yeah, but how many schools are like that? There's like, I mean, you have to go to like a prestigious
Like
art academy, right?
or,
yeah, I think
Yeah,
that outside of like the graffiti, outsider art, it's more of a thing for sure.
But you have to go to
like Cornish in Seattle, I think is like a good example of that. A lot of those like teachers and professors at that school, like the amount of context that they have for the city and for art galleries and things like this. It just puts you in that radar system, essentially.
Mm.
It's like that here with like graphic design. Like the teachers at UT are on a certain level, so they can connect you with this is more of an old school thing, but connect you with the right agency because they used to work for that agency or something like that.
Yeah, I mean it's what we were talking about earlier with being on the public art panel too, within your own city.
Right.
You know, it's like it's a bunch of professionals that have been working their career for 60 plus years, some of them maybe less, and then it's also knowing how that system works from the inside.
Okay, I have two more questions. There's one that's going to be kind of funny because you went off when I met you about doing the anti-graffiti overlay. And then I've got one last takeaway, but explain that to me again so I have it on record so I can understand. You were saying, you know, a lot of people are doing this overlay with murals where you put a coating or an overlay to where people can't.
It's like wax.
Graffiti.
It's a silicone polymer. Is what most of them are made out of.
But you went off for a good 3 minutes. Like, don't do that. It's terrible. It doesn't let the wall breathe.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's a bunch of funny, ridiculous things about it. Like, if I'm coming in with spray paint and I'm doing your mural, and you want me to put an anti-graffiti coating on there, and let's say hypothetically anything happens, a tornado comes through, and the wall gets messed up, and I need to fix it. If there's an anti-graffiti coating on there, it's literally the material that prevents me from painting on top of it.
Like melts away.
So it's, in that sense, it's kind of ridiculous. But with it being a silicone-based material, it doesn't, for like porous materials, it doesn't allow the wall to breathe. So if it's cinder block or brick or something like this that needs to be a breathable material, it's like running around in Knoxville in the middle of the summer with latex pants on for 3 hours. Your legs and everything's just sweating from the inside. It's uncomfortable. You're chafing. It's destructive. It's not good business. So why would you do that to a wall and put a latex layer on the wall or a silicone layer on the wall and make this essentially this giant building break down from the inside? So
what's a better way to deal with graffiti?
Actually embrace your graffiti community.
Yeah, right. Like have a place to paint.
That's a good question. You know, that one alleyway we
Yeah.
went and saw, where people are just coming by with Sharpies and like, hey, they're writing on it. So
Strong Alley.
the one
Yeah.
and like, that's what I would be like, I don't want to say fearful of, but just like people coming by, hey, so-and-so was here, and they're going to like write their name and whatever. And big fat Sharpies or
Right.
marks a lot, whatever, paint pens.
Shit. Now I've had something come out of that. So do you think that's some of that has come out of that funding has gone into public art? That they want to make sure to, like, I don't want to say protect their investment, but protect the money that they spent on it. Does that make sense?
It's as far as
As people wanting to put that overlay or that coating on there.
I think in this country specifically, we have this weird concept that graffiti is this illegal vandalizing act, that it should be criminalized
Right.
without taking notice at any historical context that it's an expression of, from people or anyone saying, we're here, I'm here, I was here. And it's something so innate in us, in all of us, since we could start prescribing our existential existence into the natural world. It just seems like a really ridiculous thing for me to even contemplate making that illegal or criminalized. Like, especially when you're going to cities like all throughout Europe, where things they have graffiti on them,
Okay.
and people are okay with it, and it doesn't devalue the property value, and it doesn't, like, all the theories of like the broken window theory and all this kind of stuff that really came out. It makes it almost a non-issue. But then it's also like, at what point does graffiti become, because there's things that we graffiti all the time in our own culture and American society that people don't think is graffiti, but it is.
Right.
So, Mount Rushmore,
Oh.
I think destroying these giant, beautiful mountains, that's
Yeah.
a pretty vandalous act, but no one it's considered a monument
Right.
without taking into context of what or where or who lived there prior to.
Right.
This is a kind of off question, but I was just curious. Is there anything that you've tagged that you regretted for tagging later? Like, oh man, maybe I shouldn't have tagged that.
I'm sure there is.
I'm not from the graffiti world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really write my name. Actually, I just learned coming back from Russia that Dom means home. So I actually did my first graffiti piece too this month.
I was
wrote
just
my
curious if there was something that you tagged or did real quick. Like, man, wish I hadn't done that.
I was told
After the fact.
once in Japan when I was there that only foreigners are the ones that are disrespectful enough to graffiti in Japan. And then I felt really bad. And then when I came back a couple years later, I was in a different neighborhood, like in Kweijong. Or was it Kweijong? It was Kuinji. And everything's graffiti there. And I was like, there's no way this could all be foreigners.
Damn, there's a lot of... This must be a touristy location.
Yeah, I was like, man, they got their kanji down pat.
Man, if the people that didn't like graffiti only knew how much went into graffiti and how much rules and hierarchy and technique and styles, and like if they just understood it,
How much
it would
economics, how much
Yeah,
like
just like, oh my gosh, that's why I can't get into it. It's like I missed the boat on video games and I missed the boat on graffiti because the learning curve is just like
Right.
so far.
But it's hilarious though, because when you go to like Jerry's Artorama here
Yeah.
and you go into the acrylic section, they have those bottles of like high fluid acrylic. That's a derivative straight from KR Krink from
That's
tagging.
funny. Yeah.
That's all that formula is
Yeah.
from tagging markers and people coming up with their own formulas for decades, and then finally starting a business and marketing it and selling it,
Right.
and then it being underground for a while. And then you have all the spray paint companies that start coming out with their own tagging markers, whether they're alcohol-based or acrylic-based.
Right.
And then you have the art companies that see that there's a markability in this, and they start selling the same thing. and now it's like a small bottle of that's like $20.
Yeah.
And there's and then the same people that are like, oh, I don't like graffiti, are the ones that are spending $20 on a small bottle of high fluid acrylic, having no concept where that came from.
If money can be made, it will be made.
Yeah. But that's the thing, like, think about how ingenious the graffiti community is for like making economics, making a living, making a lifestyle, making business, making everything from it.
Yeah.
You know? So it's in
And the anti-graffiti community as well.
yeah.
The economics of it.
Yeah, especially with that graffiti. One of the local artists here, he was telling me that, because he just did a public art commission, and he said that he did put this anti-graffiti coating on it, and he was really excited about it. So I started asking him questions about it, like, is it the silicone-based kind? Like, how often you have to apply it? All these things. Because, like, these companies, they say that only a professional can apply this material on, so they keep those contracts, and they will charge you thousands of dollars to apply it. And then, which is, yeah, if you have a paint spray or a roller, you can put it on.
Right.
And he was saying that it's this special blend where it's not silicone based. It's a film that essentially gets applied wet to dry, that some Dutch company or company from Europe ended up coming out, that's all organic or plant based or something like this. But once it gets applied, if someone tags on that wall, you can rinse it off, and basically it's like a layer on top of the mural that allows the spray paint not to adhere to the layer underneath, only to the anti-graffiti coating.
Okay.
And then you can wash that off, but then you have to reapply the coating. So the economics behind that of like, that means every single time you get tagged or a bubble letter or some graffiti goes up on the wall, you have to hire this professional to come out and reapply this hundreds and hundreds of dollars of anti-graffiti coating.
It's a racket.
Like, it's a racket.
Yeah,
it's such a business. Like,
just being like, hey, kid, here you go.
Oh, yeah.
Go spray.
Exactly. It's like the guy that goes around throwing rocks through windows to get window business.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, my God.
But it's just like, when he's telling me this, I was like, don't you, like...
There's a lot of off-mic conversation going to be happening.
I get it. It's cool that, like, people are thinking in a different way, not using... Because, like, the same thing with the anti-graffiti coating, there's a reason why UNESCO does not allow this material on World Heritage buildings, because it's so destructive.
Right.
And so this kind of offsets that, but then it's the labor and the... So it's just like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's funny to me.
Kids, if you want more murals in your city, just start doing graffiti everywhere.
There's some derelict buildings around town to where I want to just find whoever the real estate agent is, say, I just want to come in here and do a piece. Like, just because I want to do it.
Yeah.
Like, there's one gas station out in West Knoxville that's been sitting empty for 15 years, if not longer. And they finally have it to where it's just a big empty wall. I'm like, okay, I kind of want to do that. But I know I want to contact them because I also know it'll take time. And I know we live in an age where there are cameras every damn where.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get caught there. But it's also like, you've been letting this damn thing sit here for 15, 20 years. Do something interesting with it. They're going to repaint the damn thing anyway.
Yeah.
Like,
There was, like, about 13, 14 years ago in Seattle, there was a project called, like, Black Sheep. That was a bunch of graffiti writers, and they did exactly that. They would reach out to, like, a building owner anonymously and say, hey, we want to do this contemporary art project, blah, 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 blah. They would get permission, and they would just go in and smash out the place. So they did it in, like, an old hot tub place in, like, the U District.
yeah.
They had this house, like an old Victorian home that was going to get demolished in Capitol Hill in Seattle, that had all these amazing graffiti writers go in and just paint it. They had a huge party over the weekend, and then Monday the house was destroyed.
This makes me feel like this would be a good program for kids.
And it was just...
To be able to go into, like, high schools and be like, find high school art programs and be like, we're just going to do a piece on this, and then teach them the process. You concept, you write up what you want to do, and then everybody works together. Damn it.
Yeah.
Hold on, let me register this as a 501c3 real quick.
Are there what's Knoxville? I've only been here for like 12 hours.
Yeah.
What's what's the economics like? What are there lots of abandoned places here in Knoxville? Or
So here's what the hell? Because I'm brain fried right now. What is it called when rich people go into a poor neighborhood and take it over?
gentrification?
Gentrification. Thank you. So South Knoxville right now, they're selling some of those blighted properties that have been abandoned for 20 or 30 years now for a fuck ton of money. So, you know, the logo for like realty execs, the real estate agents. Some artists took and recreated the realty execs logo, made stickers, and said in the realty execs part, it said, "Say no to gentrification," and put it on the real estate exec signs. I was like, I took a photo of it. It's like, I love that person because that's amazing. Yes, and it's odd in that, so Knoxville is odd in that, like, you have West Knoxville, which is its own entity. It's all McDonald's and Burger King and franchises, and it's the rich side of town. Then you have East, South, and North, and like they are all areas that you can go down one street and it's abandoned houses and blighted properties, and then you can go down next street and it's all yuppie rich people. Like it's kind of all over the place. So there are a lot of still abandoned buildings. There are a lot of people sitting on abandoned buildings because they know eventually the city's going to grow and they can make a lot of money off of it. That's the sad place we're in right now. The only good part is it seems like everything takes a little bit longer in Knoxville, which I'm happy for. Because you look at a city like Nashville. Nashville's a nightmare right now because everything's stupid expensive. Whereas you could go there 20 years ago and live affordably. We get a lot of people who move here from other cities because it's so affordable to live here. Yeah, there are still a lot of abandoned. There's entire districts, though, like Happy Holler and Old North that used to be a lot rougher. Used to be a lot of abandoned buildings, and now they're not. They're breweries and restaurants and... Yeah, so yes and no. West Knoxville, you don't end up with empty buildings unless they're like an old Walmart where they've just built next door instead of investing in that property. So it's kind of hit or miss around here. But yeah, East Knoxville, a lot more. East is the black side of town. So that's where I grew up. And there's a lot of people that are still afraid to go over there, and it's nothing.
That's where we've been staying the last month.
Yeah.
That's where I rented a house.
Everybody is nice. Everybody is welcoming over there. Well, I don't know, but also you have a lot of, I hate to use the term hipsters, but hipsters that have moved in over there. A little bit of gentrification going in at East Knoxville right now. So, I don't know. It's kind of this weird balance. Like, what point are you kicking people and displacing people, and what point are you letting the people who live there build a culture or I don't know.
So which part of town do you think would benefit from more public art?
Right now, I would say...
as like a defense rather than like the stimulator for gentrification. Because
I'm trying to think. I think there's no polite way to put this. I think East Knoxville would benefit from people in East Knoxville doing it. Going to like Austin East High School or Vine Middle School and getting the kids there involved. I think that. Having a rich white person from West Knoxville who's an artist going in there and doing it, I think it's no bueno. I think that's no good. I think as long as you keep it within the community, I think South Knoxville and East Knoxville would benefit from that. But it has to be within the community. It can't be outside of that. But that's just me. Like, that's my opinion. But I don't know how you do that or how you facilitate that. Or do you do something like you bring in somebody from outside to help facilitate that? Because it's odd in that people can get siloed out here. Like an art professor at UT teaches at UT, never does anything outside of UT. Whereas I feel like they should be doing a little bit more outreach in the schools around here.
Collaborations are always good for that.
Yeah.
Where you force the artist to work with a community.
Yeah. And I think that's the problem is some people just get stuck in their own little ruts and they don't feel comfortable going outside of that. But yes, East, is underdeveloped right now. But I think some of the people that bought properties over there are sitting on them, waiting on the city to develop. That's what's happened out in South Knoxville, is a lot of property. There's one avenue, Sevier Avenue, where they've literally sat on properties for 30 years, waiting on the city to develop out over there so they can make money. And even in the old city, they're eventually going to build a baseball stadium in the old city.
Really?
So there's a friend of mine who does metal work over there, Bird on the Wire Studio, Derek. Amazing work. He was trying to buy the buildings around it so he could expand more, and they wouldn't sell because they're charging 3 times what it's worth because they know when they build the stadium, that's going to get bought, and that guy will pay 3 times what it's worth just to have that, which is a shame because now you have all these empty buildings over there that people could be using.
Well, they're not going to use it if a stadium's there.
No. No. That gets into a whole nother can of worms. There's a bar downtown in the old city that they used to have a cigar shop in there in a patio. And they kicked that guy out because they wanted to make it more family friendly for when the stadium comes in. The stadium's still 5 years away. Also, it's a bar.
Yeah.
Like, it's so dumb. So, okay, the one last thing. This may be too heavy, and y'all may kick over the mics when I say, if you could give one piece of advice to a kid or somebody who's wanting to get into art, what would that piece of advice be? Or words of encouragement or anything?
It's literally the best time and the possible moment of all of reality to do it.
Okay.
And that applies to every day and all day. But like, yeah, no hesitation.
Just do it.
Just go.
Okay.
Brent, this is your jam.
You do this on the day-to-day, man.
Yeah, just tell it like what Dominic said is tell them to do it and go for it because they have everything right here in their fingertips with this phone technology. I mean, self-promote. I mean, they're doing it. They're like their little own marketers, right? So, and I mean, it's just being focused and doing what you enjoy and what you love. Like I said, not everyone's going to be, I think, successful. I mean, or everyone would be an artist, right?
Right.
But you're going to find your passion some way, somehow through that process. And so I just tell them to focus on your strengths. Don't worry about being as good as Johnny or Sue, or you're good at something, so focus on those strengths. So that's what I really tell our students and my kids even, just focus on your strengths. And that's where you're going to really make waves with what you're doing on top of just enjoying what you're doing,
Okay.
Don't try to compare yourself to other people. You can gauge things, but just focus on your strengths.
Comparison is the thief of joy. I can't remember. I think FDR said that.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
It's fascinating because I was going to say something along the lines too of not comparing what you're doing or your work or your success to other people around you, because it's just this kind of negative downward spiral. But something that I kind of realized early on is that the majority of people that I looked up to or saw as successful in what they were doing, I think that key element is kind of those like obsessive years. So like Robert Crumb.
Yeah.
He dishes out from doing postcards. He goes to San Francisco and he just starts drawing comics obsessively for years, to the point that he's flawless with it. And he's telling those weird stories. And I think you can apply that to a lot of different creative industries, whether it's comedy or writing or acting or music, or like the people that can dedicate that time and know that they're going to fail in some regards and then they keep trying are the ones that end up coming out pretty much on top. So
I can't remember who said this. Another one is failure is just success training. And I think about, so in my business, every Monday I post a quote from somebody, Monday motivation. So I'm just full of all these quotes from people. Failure is just success training. Twyla Tharp said something like, never doubt your ability to get out of I can't remember, but it's something like don't doubt your ability in that you have the ability to get out of a problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, failure is just success training. Or the great poet laureate Wayne Gretzky said, you missed 100% of the shots you don't take.
But I think it's crazy that we live in a time where we can expect to be successful artists, like, in the moment, you know? Like, how many people created just to create, and then they died, and someone found their stuff, and then their legacy lives on forever, you know?
Yeah.
Like, we're in that moment in time where it's like, oh, I'm going to live and survive off of this, which is amazing. But, like, before, you know, you would never expect to see anything. You're doing it because you have to.
Right.
Or very few.
Yeah.
Or what is your success is different from what your success, different from your success is different from my success.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you
Cool.
guys for doing
Thanks.
this.
Thank you, man. Nice to meet you.